I'd like to call to order the Pentucket Regional School Committee meeting of January 7th, 2019. 2020, sorry. Okay, Wayne Adams, Joanna Blanchard, Bill Buell,
Here.
Emily Dwyer, Marie Balzani,
Here.
Dick Hodges,
Here.
Lisa O'Connor here, Chris Redden,
Here.
Gina Trotta,
Here.
3.5. Do we all rise to say the pledge of allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is the agenda. Motion to accept as written.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Marion, 2 minutes? Vacation. Okay, so I'm looking for updates on subcommittees. Emily? Okay, that was easy.
Happy holidays.
Public comment, if anybody does take the microphone, we just request you to say who you are, what town you're from, and keep your comments to just a few minutes. Okay, let's see any. Okay, next item is superintendent's news. Dr. B?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and Happy New Year, everybody. We're going to start off by turning it over to Mr. Bolio. Fill us in on what's going on in the student world.
So Pentucket takes on North Reading and Hawker on Thursday night in Saugus. The puck drops just after 7. The boys basketball team is playing Rockport here tonight at the high school, and the game starts in just a few minutes. The boys and girls indoor track teams take on Newburyport tonight in Andover, and the Pentucket Education Foundation's 4th annual Celebration of Education is this Saturday from 7 to 11 at the Groveland Fairways, and professional singer, actor, and Pentucket alum Catherine Keaton will be the guest speaker this year. That's what I have for tonight.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you very much. And just to reiterate, that is a big deal. Pentucket Ed Foundation, it's this Saturday at 7 o'clock. And I think the festivities, food starts serving at 8. It's $50 a ticket. You can go on, if you Google search Pentucket Education Foundation, you can see their events. And, yep, Catherine Eden, who's out there on Broadway, she'll be there to talk about her journey. So we also have with us this evening the athletic director here at Pentucket Regional High School, Mr. Dan Thornton. So we're going to turn it over to Mr. Thornton, who is going to talk to us a little bit about the athletic program. Looks like he has some folks with us. Sure.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to come to the school meeting. So I'm here to drum up some good news here from the school. And what I usually try to start off all the school years every year that we talk. And the freshmen will come in and we'll say, Pentucket is just a great place for you guys to be. It's a great building. We're going to be building a new school, which is very exciting. But the building that we have here, we like to think of, or at least I do a lot of times, as a great idea. So I look at it when I have the student athletes that come into the school, and we try to challenge them and say, what's going to be your idea when you come to Pentucket? What's going to be your big idea? What's going to be your great idea when you come here? A lot of times students have their big ideas beforehand, and it might be before they even come to the high school. And I have Jenny Hubbard here tonight. And Jenny is a member of a team that you probably know nothing about. It could be the least recognized sport at the high school, and probably one of the most successful teams that you still don't know about. They're currently ranked, I believe, number 4
Boston Herald.
in the state of Massachusetts, in the Boston Herald. They're undefeated so far this year. She's playing in the HPNA ice hockey team, which is Haverhill, Pentucket, and North Andover. So Jenny had her great idea probably, what were we just talking, 10 years ago? Yeah. Or so, when she decided to skate, to learn how to skate. And learn to skate, for those of you who don't play hockey, turns into hockey very fast. You basically learn how to skate in about, what, 3 to 4 sessions, And then after you can stand up, they give you a stick, and you're playing hockey quick. And you better get your pocketbook ready, right, Mom? Yeah, so Jenny is, she's the goalkeeper on this team. And when you see Jenny, she is one of the nicest, most sincere students that you can see here at Pentucket. She's very unassuming. She's a great kid. She walks the hallways. She represents the school with absolute pride and integrity. And when you see her on the ice, she's pretty tenacious. So Bernie Horace here, he's one of the coaches for HPNA. He can certainly stand up and vouch for her as well.
I will.
And she's what we look for when we have our student athletes here at Pentucket. She's a big idea. She's a big idea. She's got lots going for her. She's going to be going a lot of places. And Jenny, if you want to come up, you can say a few words if you want to, but you could fill us in a little bit about HPNA
HPNA.
and your experience.
Yeah. I have honestly never been on a team where there's been less drama, and girls obviously, there's drama girls.
Really?
No. My team, we get along so well, and we just have a lot of fun. It's a really good group of girls. And I've never had that on a team before, and it was really nice, and it makes it a lot of fun. And we all just, we care about the sport, and we work hard, and it's a really good team, and it's just, without it, I don't know if I'd still be able to play hockey, and it's been amazing for me. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and being able to play hockey has helped me to be able to deal with that and help myself take care of myself better, and it's just been an amazing impact in my life.
Congratulations. Well said, Mom.
You don't get to stand.
Not that easy.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
I think that's one of those, it's a tough thing to coach.
Awesome, thank you. Absolutely.
No, did you want to say a few words?
No, it's okay. No, welcome to it. I'll say a couple words.
I'd like to hear about from them, like, whenever. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I just wanted to thank Pentucket, the school, for allowing to have the co-op. Jenny's only one of 2 girls right now. There have been years past have been more girls that have played, but we feel very fortunate that the school has supported that idea of a co-op where they've been able to play with the other towns, because hockey, girls sports, Mr. Thornton said, there's not, it's probably one sport we don't hear a lot about, but the co-op is really such a great thing. It allows her to play where she might not have been able to, and as she mentioned, it's really been a great thing for her personally. And so as a parent, I just want to say thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, I'll try not to say a lot of words, so I'll try to make it brief. I'm the assistant coach. The program's been in existence for this is our 7th year. It was outstanding that Dan allowed this to happen, and I'm assuming you guys did as well, that allowed these players to come join us. I'm actually a Halo father. My daughter played there for 5 years. She has since gone on to Northeastern to play club hockey. Understand that we currently have 3 players that play collegiately, St. A's, Becker, and Lebanon Valley. We have 2 players on our team right now that are committed for one from Utica, one from UNE. I don't know where they're playing yet. She hasn't decided yet. She's been our goalie for 4 years. The other Pentucket player, Liv Cole, she's a junior. She's been playing for 3 years. I will tell you that last year we had the 6th toughest schedule in the state. This year, the AD makes us get our own schedule. I had to email 40 teams before I could fill out the 10 non-league games, because nobody wants to play us. But right now, 5-0-1. We play Akron Boxborough tomorrow, but on Saturday we play Methuen Tewksbury, the defending state champs. We play them twice. Last year we lost to them 3-1, and on their way to the state championship, they were blowing teams out like 9-2, 9-1, or something like that. Absolutely, Dan's been fantastic. Thank you so much for allowing your school and the school committee to allow for them to play. Jenny's awesome. Liv is just as good. Thank you so much for you guys for this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I had another student coming, but I think he might be tagged up in practice right now, so. But if he comes in the next 10 minutes, give me a call.
Thank you, Coach Gordon. Anybody have any questions for the athletic director? All right.
No questions?
Well,
Well,
I've
if you
got-
guys get out of your meeting quick, I'll let you in for free downstairs at the game.
There you go.
Nice.
No, you won't.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Good
really
luck.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right now.
Hopefully you'll see it at the garden.
Yeah, this will be awesome.
The garden.
Jenny, you should go to UNH.
I remember the girls trying to get a too. I went to college.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the update on the superintendent goals.
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity to just, I think last year, and I think again this year, I always said, if there's goals that are posted, I want to update you where I am progressing or not progressing on those goals. So the first goal was the participation in the new superintendent induction program. There was a point in time where I actually told Chairwoman O'Connor that I was not going to be able to go to one of the meetings because there was a building conflict. However, I have gone to all of those meetings. They actually, that day, there was a bad storm, it was ice, or wind, it was the windstorm. So western superintendents from the western part of the state couldn't get there, so they canceled the meeting. So I've attended all the meetings, I've completed all assignments, and I have my coach that I meet with on a monthly basis. The strategic plan, at this point in time, you've seen the presentations, we've put it together, it's up on the website. All the schools have presented their strategic plans, it's been updated and incorporated up on our website. Where we are right now is we're close to the midpoint, so we're working on a rubric so that they can evaluate how they're progressing on their school improvement plans. And in terms of strategic plan itself, we have quite a few areas that we are ahead of where we're projecting to be, knowing that while we're ahead now, those areas sometimes do slow down, and you'll see over the next 2 months, 2 of those areas in particular, that we have some pilots that we're about to put up on the website and communicate out to the community to try so we can get some feedback. But it has a lot to do with people understanding what we are, what we do, and who to contact, and just an incredible resource that I've not seen anywhere else except for in a human form. So I'm going to keep the suspense there. The third goal was the development of a clear K-12 writing plan. So to this point, I've gone around and met with every single, I've been in all schools, spoken to all grade levels, except for in the high school, the day I was supposed to be there. I was here, not a lot of people stopped by, so I know Mr. Conway's had some conversation with department chairs, just to find out what it is their understanding is of what they're supposed to do for writing, what they actually are doing. They often cite the standards for writing, the 3 different types of writing that they have to do. But they're not always clear what students are supposed to be able to do when they get to them and what they're supposed to be able to do when they leave. So what I've told them is the same as what I've told you. My goal is by the end of this winter to have a framework that I will share with them, for them to look at, give feedback. And yesterday morning, Mr. Conway and I actually met with a group of teachers who very much would like the opportunity for, once I collect that data, for them to help me form this district writing plan. So the ultimate goal is that by the end of this academic year, we'll have a plan that we will put into place for the next school year in terms of what happens at each grade level. We ultimately know that there's different types of writing that aren't necessarily addressed by the standards, like there's scientific writing that needs to happen at the middle school and high school level. And we know what the output is that we want students. We know we want them to be able to write well. But we also know, looking at samples, that there's some significant gaps that have happened because there's not been a clear writing plan vertically aligned or horizontally aligned for quite some time. In fact, one teacher, who was at Page, she told me that there had been one back in the early 90s, and it was, I believe, Mr. McGinn was working with, you like this, Mr. Valtero, Mr. Fennerty, Mrs. Parry, and Mr. Fay and Ms. Day, right, Ms. Day tried to come up with a writing plan for the entire district. So it existed at one point, and I asked her if she still had it. And she said, no, I just threw it away because we hadn't used it. So every meeting after that, I asked every teacher, do you have? But you had to, do you have it? Oh, I will be going to Mr. Buell's house.
We'll
shortly.
talk money later.
Great. So, but that's the direction we're moving in. It's just something that when we look at some of the courses that we have in place, writing lab, math lab, the way we operate those is very different from what the intent was, but we're operating in those ways because there's these gaps, and we're trying to address the gaps that have existed because we did not have it in the curriculum. And really, nobody knew what they were supposed to be doing. They were doing their best to meet the standards and not necessarily knowing what was going to happen after they left third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. So we've made a lot of progress on that goal. Does anybody have any questions on the goals?
So, you're looking at me funny. When you're developing that plan for the writing.
Yep.
And you're talking about like what they should know coming into, say, third grade and what they should know going out of third grade. How are you gonna assess what the students actually know going out of third grade? Is it gonna be the individual teacher that assesses their own students, or is it gonna be more of a common assessment?
So for next year, what I've told the teachers is that when we have this framework, one, it's hard for me to say right now, it's hard for me to put a lot of, to steal a phrase, meat on the bones. It's hard for me to put a lot of meat on the bones right initially. Because what I'm wanting to do is create the framework and say, here's the expectations of what has to happen at each grade level. Next year, our professional development will be heavily focused on them coming together and having conversations about what they're doing in their classrooms, not just the Page kids and the Page teachers and the Donahue teachers, but all those same grade levels coming together, and then back and forthing about what's working well, what's not working well. And then from after next year, after we go through that year, then we can start, they will tell me, these are the resources we need to beef this up. And in terms of evaluating it, we really need to start looking at, so I think we're used to blind reviews where you might have a day or 2 days where kids are submitting writing samples, and then they get evaluated on whether they need additional support in a certain area. But that's, the thought is to go back to a much older model that had been in place for some time in terms of how well a student was writing, because as we know, you can't just take that and do it on an A, B, C, D. You can for some punctuation things, I guess.
Yeah.
But just the actual writing itself would be blind is what the hope is.
But will you be assessing it at multiple points during the year? Because you don't want to get to the end of third grade and find out.
And say, oh, yes, yeah. And in fact, that's something, it'd be easy for us on the standards-based report card. It'd be something that's very easy for us to include on that.
But I think that there's always concern from parents that, like, you know, maybe the expectations, this school aren't as strong
The
as they
same,
are at this
yeah.
school, or from this teacher versus that teacher. And I just feel like that's important to somehow address. I know it's hard to address, but I feel like everybody should feel like their child at the end of third grade, no matter what their school or teacher is.
If they're ready to move on, then they've got the same abilities as the other students in the other schools. Yep. And that's one of the biggest reasons why bringing them together and having them have those same conversations. And there's going to be, I anticipate, there'll be a lot of debate, good professional debate amongst the grade level about what should we include, what shouldn't we include. Do you take points when you're grading for content? What are you looking for when you're grading for the mechanics? What are you looking for? And that's stuff that has to be spelled out in the plan. And you might even have sample rubrics. We're going to try to make it as equitable as possible from school to school.
Yeah, because I mean, there's always a little bit of a conflict of interest when a teacher's evaluating their own students.
Yes, of course. They want to sometimes make themselves look better, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love the blind review. The blind where it just goes in a pile, there's not a name on there, and someone
Right.
goes through and looks at it. To me, that's a great model.
So in kind of related, but a little bit different. So I think writing is something that for some kids it comes naturally and they're going to exceed expectations no matter what the teaching is, because I think there's just like some kids get math, some kids get writing, and it's easier. Are we going to provide opportunities to kind of push those kids beyond? And on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have kids who, no matter how much they're taught, are going to struggle with organizing their ideas, but aren't necessarily like special ed necessarily, where there's a learning disability for it. So how do we kind of cover both of those spectrums as we move this forward? And an example at the high school is like writing lab. Some kids don't need what we consider a writing lab because they already are good, fluent writers. But other kids need more than just a writing lab. They almost need like a writing, what do they call it? Well, what a typical writing lab would be, like I know Revere High School has one, where it's just an open area that kids have a study hall. They can go in and get direct assistance on some of the work that they're on, which would look different at the elementary school than middle and high. But like, so how do we encompass, here's our curriculum, but then there's these outliers of students who need further or who need additional.
Sure. I think that is always, is that one term differentiation, that is always going to be what has to happen. So if I have a writing assignment, so in the high school, if I'm a social studies teacher, I'm a writing assignment first, it needs to be agreed upon at whatever the grade level is. These are the things we're looking for. And then at that level, if there's a student that's struggling, so we all know and understand, every student when they hit kindergarten is they're not all at the same level. So that teacher has to work at the kids who are a little bit behind. They need to spend a little bit more time pushing them. The kids who already know things, they're giving them different reading opportunities, different writing opportunities. And my expectation would be the same thing has to happen for writing. It can't just be a sit and get one size fits all in any kind of writing plan. So the writing plan itself would be, here's the minimal expectations of what has to happen. And at the next level, this is what has to happen. And just like in reading, a student in third grade might already be able to read at ninth grade level, and then a student in third grade might be struggling to know just individual sight words. And that teacher with those students has to kind of, they have to differentiate what's being taught in order to help them understand the student who's struggling, to help improve that vocabulary as quickly as possible. And the student who's already up there, they need to challenge them, or otherwise the student becomes bored and might start looking at other things to do in the class, like poke people or do whatever else it might be.
Any other questions? The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's evaluation training. Would you like to speak on that?
Yeah, sure. So shortly before Thanksgiving, when we met, I had discussed how at the MAS conference, I had gone to a session on the superintendent's evaluation, and it was very informative and eye-opening, and I think we could use some work on it. So I talked to Dorothy Presser. Well, actually, I tried to talk to Dorothy. She wasn't there. So I talked to Glenn. And Glenn said, with our MASC membership, that they would be happy to come and train us they said it'd probably take 90 minutes. So I wanted to see if anyone had any thoughts on that or were willing to do that.
Yeah, I'd be willing.
Is the evaluation of the superintendent that sophisticated that we are going to need that kind of training? Because I know the difference between night and day, and what this new administration has done has been incredible. And I don't need a training to know about the improvements, but I may need the training if I'm unaware of some other issues that I need to be targeting. But I just know that right now we're running on a very set of different cylinders than we've run in over a decade.
Well, the process is different than what we do, and that can affect, like, we should have our goals, we should have had our goals that we just finished this past fall. We should have had them done a while ago in order to give Dr. Bartholomew, he has to do his goals after, based on our goals. So we need to give him more of an opportunity. So there's different timeframes and different process that we're not doing correctly.
Okay. Any other questions on this? So this is up for approval. So can I have, how should we move forward? Do you want to set up a date, or
Yeah.
do we just vote now to move forward with it and then go on from there?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve, to do the evaluation training.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Chris?
All in favor? Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Whittier School Committee representative from Merrimack. And at the end of March 31st, the Merrimack representative seat is up for renewal. So we have to advertise.
Yes,
for a
I would
certain
ask
amount of
Heather
time
to
for
put it in
every-
the paper, and to have any inquiries sent to me before January 31st would be great.
Okay, so in February, we'll ask the applicants to come to the meeting, and then we'll vote on somebody in one of the February, is it the first February meeting or the second one?
Doesn't matter to me.
Now,
Yep.
the Paul Tucker, is he gonna wanna do it again, do you know, or does anyone wanna ask him, or?
He told me that he was going to do it again. Mary Ann had reached out to him and hasn't reached out to him today, earlier today.
And he usually calls me back in a few days.
Okay. So when I spoke to him in December, he expressed interest, but in case there's any other applicants from Merrimack that want to serve. The meetings are held the second Wednesday of every month. They start at 6:30 PM. They last for a few hours, and they just meet once a month. The next item on the agenda is budget. Greg, are you going to speak on this, or?
Sure. Thank you for your input the last meeting. Your comments and your concerns were incorporated into the budget cycle I needed to actually begin printing stuff out. And if you look at my office, there's piles everywhere to be compiled into the budget book, which you will receive at the next meeting. You're going to see something a little bit more different than you've seen in the past, which is a fairly large deficit going into it compared to what we usually have. There's really no other way to put it. We're going to be looking for about $834,000 in new revenue between the state, the towns, interest income, the various things like that. And about $704,000 of it immediately going to new special ed costs for transportation and out-of-district placements, which makes this very, very challenging going forward. So the budget book you're about to see is going to present a deficit projection of about $606,000. Now, conversely, on that very same night, a bunch of things are going to start to happen. Probably right after you get out of here that night, you're going to go home, and the governor's going to be on TV doing a State of the State address. And that's probably the second domino that'll fall towards this. The first one will be the Essex Regional Retirement Board assessment. We should get that sometime before then, but we still haven't gotten it as of yet. That will give us an idea of a big number that can move fairly significantly in either direction. I budgeted at 9% because that's always the actuarial table, but depending on what the other members of the district do for their salary structures and things like that, our percentage of the increases could be smaller, larger, but we won't know until they actually send out their actuarial tables and our assessment for that year. Of course, we'll pay it all at once and take advantage of the discount. After the governor gives his State of the State speech, and everybody does their little dance the next day, sometime hopefully by Friday of that week, because it's a Tuesday, we will get our cherry sheets, or at least the governor's proposing for a cherry sheet, which is what we drive our budget off of, which drives our assessments we give to the towns. The big three things to look out of that will be the state aid, obviously, we get Chapter 70, regional transportation, we can compare that to what's in the budget, and the state offsets. And this is sometimes even more importantly than the income, because this is where you'll get billed for your charter school, for your choice out and things like that. And those are budgetary line items now in our budget, so they adjust things more than a reserve account would. So they'll have to go into the budget. They can either drop significantly or increase significantly depending on how many kids go out and how many kids are going to charter schools. And the last thing that comes out of that is the net minimum spending by the towns, which is the first driver in a two-step methodology for assessing the towns. Once I know that, we'll have an idea of what we can do, and I will have a little chat with our town administrator or finance director, depending on what type of town they are, and say, you know, this is what, if we're doing the budget the way I'm presenting to the school committee, what it would cost you. And then, you know, the national TV from the whole woe is us starts, and well, sometimes they say, you know, we can do a little better than that, but it kind of depends on that. And then it'll be a philosophical discussion with you, how you guys want to proceed after that. But I will have a draft assessment anyways for you for the next meeting after we give you the budget books. Should be ready, unless something goes wrong at the state. And then in late February, the final domino falls, which are the GIC insurance rates. We are budgeted for 5% increases for retiree in general. We've been doing better than that. 1.9 last year, I think it was like 1.4 the year before. The year before that, I think was more like 3.5, but we budgeted 5 because it's a safe place to play as you're going forward. So hopefully a reduction there can help lower our deficit and go forward. But all that being said, you'll get your books next week. Next meeting, obviously. And then we'll begin to develop questions for the meeting after that, including having draft assessments and things like that. You'll have a chance to read through them. And as always, once you get it, feel free to reach out to me any questions, concerns, and all the little mistakes I made that you find. It's a long book with a lot of ties and ticks back and forth. I try to catch them all, but I miss them occasionally. But that's where we are right now with our budget.
Thank you.
Dick?
The deficit of 606, 100,000. What's your strategy when you talk to the 3-town selectmen about, how do we make that up? That's a bill that has to be paid, whether...
Well, listen, first we see how much of it actually exists. Because, like I said, the governor can come back and raise regional transportation 100,000 in aid.
Okay.
Great, now it's 506. Or charter school, you go up 200,000 and look, now it's 806. But we wait for those little dominoes to fall. Once I get that, and the spending number comes out, I can do a draft assessment based upon just what I've got here now. And I'll know the governor's numbers, and I'll let them know that obviously these are adjustments that you guys will make because it's just easy to do. We know what they're going to be. So then I'll bring the towns in and say, now this will be your assessment. This is where two-step gets difficult because it kind of creates peaks and valleys with the towns based upon a whole bunch of criteria that I could bore you with forever, but most of it's not even verifiable. Tax returns from the people who live in towns and things like that, which you can never verify if the numbers are right. So you just kind of have to take them at face value. Now, hopefully it doesn't change a lot, but sometimes it can change. A town could just get its net minimum spending go up 150,000. All the other towns drop. The other 2 towns go, great, we can afford it without an override, and the 3rd town's like, I'm a dead man. So what we've usually tried to do is work in a way that we can get it back to no one has to do an override. And usually the number we start out with is like in the high 2s to 3s, and after the governor's budget and GIC and the other numbers come out, it becomes a workable number that we can do that. We've always tried to avoid the normal regional school district methodology of 2 out of 3 ain't bad because you get your budget. But it also creates a lot of hard feelings with the 3rd town because they can go for that override, but there's really no need for anybody to go out and vote to raise their taxes because they're going to have to pay no matter what. So it can create hardships to that last town's budget. They have to make a whole bunch of cuts and things like that. We haven't had to do that here in probably a decade. But again, that's part of the discussion I'll have with you guys when we see what it shakes out with. And I'll tell you what they've said because I'll have spoken to them. But I do call them in, we sit in my office and we go through it all. But it won't be with the selectmen, it'll be with the finance directors and the town administrators. And that'll be there, and they'll go back and prep their finance committees for when we go there to talk to them. And their finance committees will talk to the selectmen. It kind of works its way up the chain that way.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you, Greg. The next item on the agenda is enrollment comparisons. Mr. Conley, would like to speak on this?
Sure. Be brief. You have three years' worth, this year's, last year's, and the year before, for comparison's sake. I think this is information that the committee be provided with annually, just for comparison's sake to see. And there's a lot of interesting information here. Some of it very much related to just what Greg was just speaking to. So, have any questions? It's good information for you, I suppose.
Anybody have any questions? Everybody good? Okay, Thank you.
Thanks for this, Brent.
Thanks, Mary Ann. She did a lot.
Thank you, Mary. And the last item on the agenda is the Page School Playground Project. Dr. B?
Thank you again, Madam Chair. So the town of West Newbury, like the town of Groveland, are currently looking at projects to make their respective playgrounds at their schools handicap accessible and ADA compliant, which they're not. If you've gone to Merrimack, it took Merrimack, the town of Merrimack, quite a bit of time to get that playground done correctly. The funds were there, the people were well-intended, they were gonna put it together, but it did not meet the criteria. So at this point, the town of West Newbury is meeting with the Conservation Committee the Conservation Preservation Committee, mid-month, in order to apply. They're asking for just over $500,000 to renovate the playground at Page to make it accessible. This is multifaceted. I've already written a letter of support. The CPAC, the Special Education CPAC, they've gone ahead and they've written a letter of support, and they've actually were the driving force behind this for the town of West Newbury. And tonight, what I'm asking is if the school committee would vote on supporting, it's not our, we all know this is not our property because it's owned by the town of West Newbury, but in terms of its impact on our students, if the school committee would vote to endorse this project.
I'll make a motion to approve, or to endorse the project. I also wrote a letter.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Well, I also heard that the Board of Selectmen voted it yes last night, or to support it, so.
Sabrina?
So why exactly do we need to endorse it? I'm not saying it's
Just so that the
bad,
town.
I'm just curious
So the
why.
town knows that we would like it.
That's, so the town, so when they goes to the committee, the presenters can say it has the endorsement of this person, this person, this group, and this
Okay.
group.
It doesn't mean we're monetarily
Nope.
supporting, it's
No.
just,
No.
okay. Says we
It's
think
all
it's a good
CPC
idea.
funds.
When I think it's because they're asking the CPA, the Community Preservation Account, that
Yep,
we
we're
all,
trying to use
we
this.
pay extra taxes for, they're asking to use that, so they want to make sure that it's something that's
Supported.
supported on a wide basis, and not just for the people who want the playground. So, that we think it's going to be valuable for all of the students and for the education of everybody at
Yeah,
Page.
so in my letter of support, I just pointed out that we try to educate, we try to accommodate for all students, not just certain types of students. And having one student sit on the sidelines while everyone else is having fun is just not, that's not fair. It's not a good pathway to go down. So for that reason alone, I support any project that's going to bring about equal access for all children.
And they're also kind of using, because it's, there's a lot of trails behind the Page School that people hike during, on the, so they want, they're gonna set up probably, some shade places, so for like the community, it can use it too on the weekends, like if they're hiking and they want a break and can hang out.
This is part of the playground?
Well,
or-
the playground abuts like a hill, and it's all trails back there, so, and people in the community use those trails every weekend, so.
So the more important question, I think, we are not monetarily responsible for
Yeah.
any of the.
And if we're approving it, if we're saying that we support this project, are you vouching, saying that the project has been planned correctly, the playground has been?
We're
Just
endorsing-
because we haven't.
Yeah, right.
We haven't seen anything.
Yeah,
I mean, I think the West
neither,
Newbury
I
people have,
haven't,
but.
but we're endorsing the concept. I don't think they've been able to go and do anything because they can't, they have a
Okay.
preliminary idea of what it's
All
going
right,
to
so
be.
we're just endorsing that we want
The
it.
concept, yes.
Okay, that's
And that
fine.
there's a need for it, there's a big need for it.
Yes. It's
I think-
unusable half the time because of flooding, and, I mean, it's.
The town of Groveland, I think they're having a meeting, or their CPC is having a meeting this Thursday, and I know we have,
They just finished their project.
yeah, they have,
They have
so,
a brand-new playground project down there at the Pines.
and now they're talking about the one at Bagnell will be on Thursday. And I know Bagnell representatives are going to be there presenting, because they've received money through the Pentucket Education Foundation in order to put up swings that are accessible by any child. But it's, once they started that. Groveland looked into a much bigger project, just renovating the entire thing.
So, I know I fully support it. You know, I think everybody needs to be included. So, any other discussion? Not seeing any? Okay, all in favor? Okay. Any other public comment? Heather's the only one left out there. Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Ho, ho.